You ever have that deep, nagging feeling that something is just off about your job? You might blame the long hours or the tough deadlines, but what if the problem isn't the work at all? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea from Friedrich Nietzsche that pretty much flips our whole modern idea of work and leadership on its head.
So, let's just start with a really direct question, one that gets right to the heart of all this talk about burnout and quiet quitting. Is it really the work you hate, or is it the boss? Nietzsche would say, that's where the real problem is hiding. That feeling of resentment, it's got a much deeper, more psychological root than we usually think.
And this gets us to the absolute core of the issue, what Nietzsche called the worker's real problem. And believe me, it's not about paychecks or vacation days. Not really. It's about a fundamental human need that our modern work culture has just completely failed to deliver.
Okay, here's Nietzsche's big diagnosis, and it is fascinating. He says the real suffering at work comes from looking up at the person in charge and seeing, well, basically seeing yourself. Not some inspiring higher being, but just someone who's maybe a little more ruthless, a little better at the game, in his words, just as common and greedy. I mean, the hard work is one thing, right? But grinding away for a boss you can't even admire, now that's what really breaks your spirit.
And this realization sparks two really powerful emotions: disgust and something he called ressentiment. That's a deep, festering feeling of bitterness and spite. The moment you see your boss as nothing more than a shrewd merchant, any chance of finding a higher purpose in what you do just evaporates, and all you're left with is this ugly residue.
So what happened? What did we lose along the way? For Nietzsche, it all comes down to a sense of nobility in leadership. And the contrast between the way things used to be and the way they are now, it's pretty stark.
And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? It's like night and day. On one side, you've got the noble ruler. Their power wasn't just about money. It came from something inside, a sense of power, rooted in character and ancient pride. This gave the whole system a kind of divine meaning, and people could actually find noble dignity in their service. But then you look at the modern employer, just a smart merchant, driven by a lust for possession. All the magic is gone.
You see, that noble presence from the past created what Nietzsche called a theatrical and heroic aura. Leadership wasn't just about managing a spreadsheet. It was a performance of greatness. It gave meaning to the whole social order. People were willing to put up with almost anything if they felt like they were part of some grand, heroic story led by someone truly exceptional. So what happens when you strip away that nobility, that heroic aura? How does the modern boss look then? Well, Nietzsche doesn't mince words.
From the worker's point of view, the boss just becomes a predator. Not a great leader, not an inspiration, just someone who's a little bit better at the hunt for resources, for possessions. There's no awe, no heroic quality. They're just playing the same game as everyone else, only they're winning a little bigger. And the ripple effect on society is huge, a stagnation of the spirit. When everybody from the top floor to the mailroom is just focused on utilitarian profit, on what's in it for them, nobody bothers trying to be magnanimous or genuinely great. Our whole culture becomes this endless hustle, totally laborious, but spiritually empty.
And this isn't just about you feeling bummed out at your desk. Nietzsche saw this as a massive, system-wide problem, a real crisis of authority that puts the very stability of society at risk.
And here's the domino effect he described. It's pretty chilling. It all starts when the people at the top lose their own dignity, when they become just rich instead of noble. That, in turn, triggers disgust and rebellion from below. The very bonds holding society together get corrupted by all this cynicism, and you end up in what he calls a suicidal cycle of envy and revolt. The whole structure starts to wobble. Now, Nietzsche ties this social decay to his most famous idea, the death of God. By getting rid of that ultimate noble presence, whether it's a divine king or a God-given order, the main anchor for the whole social hierarchy is just gone. Suddenly, power isn't seen as this sacred, preordained thing. It's just a common commodity that anyone can get their hands on if they're shrewd enough.
So what rushes in to fill that vacuum of authority? According to Nietzsche, it's filled by actors. People who don't have any real integrity, but are great at using the language of democracy and equality as theatrical masks. They're just hiding a simple lust for possession. They're playing the part of a leader, but they're just shrewd merchants in a costume.
Okay, so is it all doom and gloom? Are we just stuck in this cycle of envy and bad bosses forever? For Nietzsche, the answer is no. But his solution is, well, it's a challenge, and it might not be what you expect.
Look, his solution isn't about turning back the clock and trying to bring back the old aristocracy. He knew that was impossible. Instead, he called for the rise of a totally new kind of person, the free spirit, someone who can create their own nobility right from within.
So what does this free spirit even look like? Well, they create a new kind of noble presence. Their pride isn't from their family name. It's an ancient pride they develop inside themselves. And here's the key: their authority comes from their integrity, not their bank balance. Their power is their will to power, which is just his fancy term for that inner drive to grow, to create, to overcome. They become a living, breathing reason for life for others, just by being who they are.
And that brings us to the final crucial takeaway. For Nietzsche, rediscovering this kind of noble existence isn't just some personal self-help project. He saw it as the absolute bedrock, the prerequisite for any society that wants to be stable, meaningful, and genuinely creative. So, I'll leave you with this question, which takes Nietzsche's 19th century idea and drops it right into our laps today. In our world, a world completely run by commerce and profit, what does true, inspiring nobility even look like anymore? Can it even exist? That's a big one to chew on.